Welcome to episode 95 of Canberra Metalheads. This is, as far as seasons go, season 6, episode 2. We do episodes a little bit more sparingly now. We've covered off a large range of bands around Canberra, and return guest on the show, third time ever on the episode, first time ever with Lukey. We've got Lucy from Armoured Angel.
How you going, guys?
Yeah, well, thanks, man. Thanks
That's
for coming
good.
on.
Good to see you.
And Lukey Lucifer. Good to have you back on the show. We did 2 episodes before, and they've probably been our most, if not our most listened to episodes, definitely our most interacted with episodes.
Oh, cool.
So I get a bunch of messages and emails and stuff. Like, some of them are just, hey, good work, whatever. Every now and then you'll get someone like, can you shut up and talk? Let the guest talk for once, which I'm not going to, unfortunately. I also get a lot that are like, yeah, good job getting Lucy on the show. So it's always great to have you.
Oh, good to get some positive feedback. Yeah.
And such a staple of the Canberra metal scene. It wouldn't be Canberra Metalheads without having you on. We mentioned this in one of the first episodes of having you, but it's good to go full circle and pay homage to, you know, one of the original founders of the Canberra metal scene.
I think it goes a lot further than that too, but like the influence that you've had on the scene in Australia as a whole. There's, a few people that you come across that haven't heard of at least one of the bands you've been in or the work you've done. With patches and stuff too,
or you've got a passion for that sort of style or whatever, and
for sure,
continue to roll with that and work in the industry in one way or another.
Once you establish, like, why stop?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a passion.
It's the what's the Steve Hughes bit, the metal till death. You never used to be metal, you metal until death.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the agreement that we've signed, metal till death.
Yep.
And also it's good to actually be in a proper studio. One day, it's like every now and then when I come to Melbourne and we queue up an interview, I get a glimpse into the future when one day, podcasting becomes a full-time thing.
That's what you're aspiring to. Where you're heading, because this is a great setup, isn't it?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm not sure whether people really want to see me in 4K, but it's good to have the option.
Yes, give them the option and they can choose.
It's good to let them know that that's what they could have and they can wheel back from it.
It's always backwards compatible. You can, If anyone's having trouble seeing my face, you need glasses, because this is the best it's going to be. You either that or you live in a commune with no internet connection.
Which you need better equipment. They need better equipment.
Which leads me into so for people that haven't listened to the show before, I've spent the last 94 and this is 95 episodes interviewing bands that have either played in or currently reside in Canberra, being Canberra Metalheads, and it's led me to having like a broad range, everything from Nick Oliveri to local bands through to touring bands, all that sort of stuff. And we also do a little bit of gig promotion, putting on gigs with the Heathen Fest and stuff like that. Yep. After all the gigs that you've played on and been in, what's it like to see this come full circle and see that people are still carrying the torch when it comes to putting on gigs and stuff like that?
Oh, that's fantastic. But sadly, things are kind of changing a little bit at the moment. We've just announced that the Bendigo Hotel here in Melbourne is closing up. It's got a couple of weeks to go and then it's all gone. And that's been a great mainstay for, loved seeing Arc Goat there, Cemetery Urn, you name every local band, Metal Oriented has played there. I think Adelaide's just lost a couple of venues in Sydney as well.
I mean, I think Sydney's lost the majority of their iconic venues nowadays, or not most of them, but a lot of them are gone.
It's a bit sad to see. I think we're looking, I just saw a quick little interview with the owner of the Bendigo, and his reasoning was insurance overheads, and that's a lot what happened with, remember one year that Destruction came out for Metal for the Brain, and they ended up playing, and I was playing in Reign of Terror at the time, and we ended up supporting them, but they were going to headline Metal for the Brain, and I think Alchemist, who were running it then, the public liability costs were just exorbitant. So consequently, it just made the whole thing non-viable. And I think we're looking at that coming back again with costing of insurance, etc. So that could be a big crushing moment. But it's great to see that things are still sort of going on and revitalised, and they do go through ebb and flow, But yeah.
I think that costing thing is like, we were always pretty lucky with a lot of the venues that we worked with initially with Heathen Fest, because I used to work at the venue. We had a pretty good turnaround with that. We got the venue for free.
Yep.
He kept bar and would kick him a percentage of the door every now and again.
Yep.
And we would get a discount on the hotel rooms, but it also meant that the one nighter, because it was attached one night of the year, or multiple nights, but whenever we had it, because I'd had like 6 bands with all 5 dudes in it each, he'd be booking out like all 27 rooms were full. And he said the best thing about it is he didn't have to put a security guard on, because there's a metal crowd. They govern themselves. The rooms weren't trashed in the mornings. Like, you had to like tell people sometimes, don't make the beds, because the housekeeping are going to come through and do it, but like, appreciate the gesture. And that sort of stuff. So I was like a little bit blind to that initially coming in, and then starting working with some other venues. And they started we've got like a venue fee, and then there's like an overhead in case of emergency, like if we've got to cover broken stuff.
Some venues taking your merch sales as well, a percentage of your merch sales.
And it's crazy, because you end up with a lot of people who don't know the ins and outs of it, who are like, oh, why aren't you doing any more gigs? Just do one at this venue. It'll be good. Like, I've got 50 people that want to come do it, and it's just like, unfortunately, it's not viable, and you end up with that kick-on effect of like, you want to do the gigs, but both the promoter and the venue like can't afford to do it. It's just too much.
Not financially viable or whatever. There's a lot of, I guess it's like anything, what goes on behind the scenes that people are blind to and ignorant to, and not in a demeaning way, but just because they don't work in that scene or environment, they're oblivious to what goes on and what the hindrances can be. So there's a lot to it. So but it's good to see that people are still putting gigs and mini fests or whatever on. And it's
have
great.
you noticed the wave in the Australian music scene where you'll see it peak sort of every 10 years? You'll see like one band will come out of retirement, and then it has like that kick on effect of like, people will be like, holy shit, like it's like when Blood Duster did a handful of shows again before they did the fuck you, we're dead thing. And then there was just like this splurge of grindcore scenes on the scene again, which is really cool.
You can see that with pretty much every scene. I mean, if you go far enough back, I remember back in the 70s, everyone's favourite band was an Aussie band, AC/DC, The Angels. I might be paraphrasing here with timelines. Rose Tattoo, Sherbet, Hush, bands like that, just Ted Murray Gang, whatever. And then later into the 80s, the Aussie Tall Poppy Syndrome kicked in, and Aussie bands were nothing, and everyone's favourite band was an overseas band. And then in the 90s and maybe early 2000s, I'm trying to remember some of the bands like Powderfinger and bands like that. Like, suddenly, people's favourite band was an Aussie band again, and you see the ebb and flow and the flux.
And like, you see the influence come through too. I remember when Jets, the Get Born album, and like when that first came on, and it had like, it was obviously intentionally put in there, but they had like the live studio noise in the background of like like give me another go at that track and shit like that. And like Dad listening to that and being like, fuck, this is how rock albums sounded when I was a kid. And it was sort of like a bit of a callback too.
Absolutely. Jet very much so, even with the style of music was a bit of a
which is
cyclical,
nice. And then they sort of went in a different direction. I think at that point, to get like good radio play, you had that initial I'm on the scene, and then you could do it like with Wolf Mother's first album, and everyone was like, this is like good Aussie rock again. And then it sort of, the differences of the band sort of showed through.
they started forging a bit more of their own identity or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
I think another impact on that is also covers, though. Like, there's people out there, like I know in the Canberra scene, I see a lot of it working in the industry. You see, I said industry. Call me a wanker, you fucks. And
we've all done it.
Yeah. Oh, look, he's getting out the industry talk.
Yeah.
In the biz, one of those fuckers. But yeah, what will happen is they'll be like, all right, we're going to do a cover night. So we want someone that can play really good at guitar, someone that can play, like, so what they'll do is a 90s cover night.
Yep.
So we need someone that can do Rage Against the Machine style guitar, someone that can do Korn's level bass, and someone that can do, like drums, like on that same level as all that. So they'll pull like the best musician from 5 local bands to make a super group that can go on stage and do like 5 different bands in one night. They have to practice for like 6 months before the thing. They have no time to write their own stuff for their band. A lot of the time they're the person that writes for their band because they're the key player. And before you know it, all the local scene produces less original stuff because all their key members are off doing cover night.
Covers,
because the general population won't go and watch an originals band because they go like, oh, I'm not going to get a chance to go and see, I never seen Korn since the 90s, so I'll go spend my money and watch a cover of them now. So, and like a lot of promoters do that. And to be fair, the same crowd that goes to those don't usually come to the originals nights. So it's not like they're taking crowds away from other gigs, but they are taking band members away from other gigs, which then affects the people that like originals. So I noticed that a lot now was like, but I think that is more of a recent problem because like I feel in the first wave, those bands weren't old enough to warrant needing covers yet. They weren't iconic enough. Like they were still up and coming.
However, if I can contradict you there a little bit, going back before your time into my time, when I first started getting interested in music, wanted to be in a band, I thought I'll start roadieing for bands and I'll learn how it all works, you know what I mean? Started putting bits of PA together, all this kind of stuff. And my friend that I roadied with, we Sean Hackett, who was known as Motley. So we started roading for local bands, and he had a 5-foot road case just full of everything: drumsticks, guitar strings, bass strings, drum keys, flashlights. He started doing pyros for some of the bands, which was a Coke can back in the day was the solid steel that you couldn't crush by hand. So he'd cut one in half and fill that with gunpowder. God knows where he was getting that from. And line them along the front of the stage and just cut a lead off, plug that into a wall socket, and just flick the wall socket on, and the gunpowder would explode. So we were doing all stuff like that, and all those bands we were doing that. Well, he was doing that specifically for one band called Diamond, and they were kind of a metal band, but it was all covers. I think they started doing a little bit of their originals and ended up changing their name to Forever. We might have gone there last time we spoke. And there was a real circuit there. You'd go to Cooma, Batlow, and you'd play all the football clubs. That's where all the concerts
like
were
Goulburn and Yass and stuff.
Not so much Goulburn and Yass, but more, say, Marnica Football Club, Royals Football Club, which I think was in Western. So there are very few sort of pubs doing it, and then a bit later on, there was like places like Floyd's and the Jam Factory in Woden or Western, I think, that would accept punk gigs. And I think we went there last time. I'm digressing all over the place. But
if people haven't listened to the last 2 episodes with Lucy, go and check them out.
Follow my train of thought into this one. But it was also, which I didn't mention, the time of the Satanic Panic. So that was a big factor. So punk was sort of anti-establishment, and that was acceptable. But metal was kind of sexist but also satanic, so that was unacceptable. You know? And we had a lot of Christian groups try and shut us down.
It's also that you definitely would have had this where you've been in the right era for it, where people are like, oh, like look at the theme of the bands, look at the names of the albums and stuff. They have to be satanic.
Yep.
And then just because you play into it because you know you're pissing someone off.
Yep.
Which
is what rock and roll is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Like if you're not making someone angry, you're not doing it right. And like I remember back in school we had like one music teacher that got it.
Yep.
And another one that was just like anything louder than AC/DC is just screamo.
Yep.
Like it's not good. You can't understand them and shit. And just like straight away being like, you're not a real musician. If you're going to play anything for me, it has to be this. Yep. So I would like knowing that would fail every music assignment. Because I would go in and he'd be like, all right, well, did you learn this? So like, you meant to learn this Beatles song. Yep. And I'd be like, no, but this is Chainsaw Gut Fuck by Mayhem. I learned it on bass and would just start. And it'd be like the next time would be the same thing. And it was purely that just playing into it. And he was the roll on from the Satanic Panic. Like he grew up with all
the
that
authority
metal,
figure that dismissed it as just noise. Yeah.
But his version of punk was still like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like that was his anti-establishment. Like, oh man, you're really pushing it with that playing under
Rage
bridge.
Against the Machine.
So
with a 5-foot roadie case, you're talking about doing some pyros and stuff.
Yes. So Sean was doing pyros. Motley was doing pyros. Sorry, I digressed off that subject.
No, that's I'm the host. That's why I keep going.
Putting it back on track.
Don't let me start.
Keep the kids in line, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to reduce the amount of emails being like, you didn't let him talk me in.
Yeah. So was watching podcasts or whatever, little snippets on YouTube, and up came Kiss's lighting designer, and that was actually Motley. So he actually built up to.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, whether he still is now, but a few years back he was Kiss's lighting guy. Yeah. So he, had that focus way back when we used to roadie together in the 80s, like literally early 80s,
Nice.
Yarralum the Woolshed, that was another venue.
Right.
So things like that. What's I'm trying to remember now. The infamous DRI gig. You remember where that was? That was kind of a Woolshed-y type thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. DRI actually recently played at the basement again.
That.
Yeah, it was cool. Cool
again. Yeah,
it's a good. Yeah. Like, there's a few key members of the Canberra metal scene.
Yep.
And it's nearly like bingo. Like if they're all four of them are at the gig, it's like a good old school crowd because
the four horsemen of the Canberra metal gigs.
So you just it's just like, but I think that like you said, it is contradictory to what I was saying a bit because having that covers wouldn't have brought your mate into it.
There was no local bands. Yeah, it was all cover bands. Yeah.
So it does have it does have its place. I think that covers do have their place. But I just feel like there should be some middle ground where maybe they sort of have people that, because there are people that legitimately prefer to play covers than their own. They don't. Some people are really talented.
Don't have that creative bent to write
really,
their own stuff. Yeah.
If they've got a tab or something, they can nail it. Like they're perfectionists and they can do it. And there's other people that are a bit more like go with the flow a bit more. Yeah. And I think that bringing people up through the scene creates more musicians. So I think that maybe it's just a matter of there's just not enough drummers. Was that always a problem? Because it's still a problem. There's not enough drummers. Drummers are drummers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we had real trouble getting a drummer back in the day. Took Rowan and I when we first started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we got a drummer in Christmas '85, just after we'd changed the name to Armoured. No, '84. Sorry.
What was the original name?
Oh, dare I say? It was we were called Metal Asylum.
Yeah. So there's a
hell yeah.
There was a dude I ran into in Goulburn when I was living there, whose name escapes me now, and he only referred to you guys as Metal Asylum.
Oh, really?
And I was just like, "Fucking hell, man!" And he was
days, yeah.
He had a cool sort of rock band thing happening. He'd been playing on and off in the scene for a long time, but he did it with a lot of bands, only referred to them as the name.
Right. Only like your demo stuff.
Like doing exactly that.
The true cult.
Wow. No, nothing was ever put out under that. And I think we changed the name to Armoured Angel. Sort of must have been about November, December 84. And then I think, we got Dave as a drummer. Christmas 84, had a Christmas party, I think it was, down the lake, Christmas party down the lake, mutual friends, and suddenly there he is, just kicked off from there,
Yeah.
So,
was it also, like, you'd get that common thing, you see it now, but you definitely see it in the crossovers a lot, especially in a smaller scene like Canberra. Even though Canberra was larger, it was still... You still get that rural sort of feeling because it's just a city built in the middle of the bush.
Yeah, true.
Where you'd have like
isolated,
a guy playing drums in one band, but he was also the drummer in another band, and the guitar they shared around. So you'd get like bills and stuff where you'd end up with like the same guy just stays on stage like the entire night.
Three sets, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I guess that happens. Yeah. But as I noticed, as all the sort of say more the rock pubs like the Asylum and the Terminus and the Terrace Bar and the Gypsy Bar and all that. When venues like that close down, suddenly there's no local bands. There's nowhere for them to play. I guess the youth cafes were there, but we kind of lucked on because the only place to play kind of was the youth cafe, and luckily that's just as thrash was emerging, so that's what the kids were into. Call them kids, but the young sort of, it was predominantly the male teenagers that were into it, and they were underage. So, then as they came of age, pubs started accepting metal into the pubs. So that crowd grew with you and into the pubs and clubs and whatnot. But earlier on, couldn't get a gig in a pub or a club, and even if you did, there wasn't even, there'd be 5 people there because there was no one into it really, in Canberra, small population, but.
Yeah, you're talking in the last episode about like just getting people to do security and then just kids rock up like youth group people.
Exactly.
Like, just
a bunch of little 10-year-olds.
RSA officers, which is what they're referred to now. Well, not kids, but like basically it's like a level between the bartender and the security guard. They have like RSA officers, people that just basically secchi guards that beat someone up that can't do that job anymore legally.
Dude, they're just schooner narcs is all they are.
Just drink collectors. Huh?
Yeah. Or people that are like drinking in the car park, like
which is like every AA gig pretty much.
Exactly.
So we did we were in cahoots doing a little bit of promo before we kicked off as just Metalheads by ourselves with a company down the coast. We were just running promo and like posters and shit for them. Yeah. We had a hardcore gig come through, and it was, I can't even remember now. It was like the Bennies and something else, and it was like they'd done one gig with them before, and it was like one of their only sellout shows for this venue. Yeah. We only held like 90 people in this venue.
Yeah.
And the head promoter from the father company of the promotion thing was like, we'll do an all ages gig, and that'll work out really well. Yep. And it did, because it sold out within the first week of pre-sales. The AA gig just sold out, and then immediately after it was the 18s plus gig. And what it was is a lot of these dudes went in, brought a ticket for the AA gig, and would come in like 16, 17 and stuff, and then just stayed there all night, waited till the changeover, and would sneak back downstairs from the thing. Gotcha. But that was the biggest thing for it, was they were like, what are the downsides? And I was like, you're going to sell out because there's no gigs, like nothing harder than like, maybe a disco night or something for people in that teenage bracket here on the coast at the moment.
And kids have got that aggression.
They got that aggression. They wanted to get. So they put on a like a hardcore gig, and we're like, go do your karate in the pit, man. Like, have fun. But I was like saying to the promoter at the time, I was like, we're going to need a security guard just for the AA gig, because the amount of people are going to get pissed in the car park and then come back. Yeah. And he's like, no, it'd be fine. They're a mob of kids. Oh, wow. And called it. They wrecked one of the foldback speakers because they destroyed the barricade and were just straight on the stage. Yep. Security got overrun because they tried to pull people out of the pit, and then they just started pitting around security. Yep. And it was just like, it was a shambles.
Yeah, right.
But it also meant we had an in for the next time that we wanted to do it. We knew that if we wanted to sell out a show, we're like, oh, well, man, like the kids are going to be there for it because they got nothing else to do. And they just started coming to these gigs. But then you also, like you're saying, you had the grow up effect of like, by the time we actually rolled around and started doing Heathen Fest, there were dudes there that were like, oh, I went to one of the gigs that you promoted when I was like 15, and now a couple of years later, I'm like fresh 18, now I'm 19, now I'm 20.
Gig,
I can come to the one where I'm allowed to drink and I'm not going to be a dickhead because I don't want to get barred for life.
It's a building process, yeah. It's a for the long haul.
The future vision.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't matter what age the crowd is, it can always get out of hand. What have you ever been at a gig? Tell us a story about a time that you've actually been in a mosh pit or something and just started to see the tides were turning and you were like, this is going to get rowdy. Like,
well, yeah, it's funny you mentioning it reminded me when we supported Bolt Thrower in Salinas in Sydney. So there was security on the side of the stage, you know, in the typical white shirts, and that gig, I think like about 5 people went. When I say went home, went to hospital in ambulances. It was pretty brutal. And yeah, I guess back in the early 90s, that would have been maybe even 94. So people were climbing on the stage and stage diving. I think people were diving off the speaker stacks as well. You know, and if memory serves, unless I'm confusing the venue, I think they had maybe a second floor with railings as well.
Okay.
Might be thinking of the Phoenician in Sydney. But at that Bolt Thrower gig, yeah, they were pulling, I think of how I phrase this, pulling the bouncers into the crowd. So all the security just disappeared and then came back in Bolt Thrower T-shirts and were helping people up onto the stage. So they got pulled into the crowd and beaten up. So they went, well, this isn't working. We'll change tacks. So that was probably the wildest I've seen. Yeah, that was pretty phenomenal, that gig. Yeah,
there's
that's crazy. It's nearly like they're like, you can pick the white shirt at the metal crowd. Like, you really need to rethink your tactics if you want this to work.
Yeah.
There's I remember when I was old enough to realize that I was metal was for me, which is like pretty young, from like getting on to like the old man with like introducing us like Sabbath and stuff pretty young. But when it went from, you go from like Sabbath and you start working your way through, and like my mate gave me a Metallica tape, and I like got onto Slayer, and then I went from there. And I was like old enough to just be at that thing where if I was really nice, my mate's dad could have taken me to a Cannibal Corpse show back in like, it's like early thousands ish, and I was like, fuck yeah. And it was just, I think it was like the Rudd government or something at the time banned Cannibal Corpse because of their lyric content, and because they were like, there was like I just remember it being everywhere on the news, and it was like violent bands like this coming to Australia and playing shows, and it was like just dudes in the pitting, and they're like, look, they're fighting each other at their own concerts. Like, how do we let this into our country? And it's just like, fuck, man. Like, if
lack of understanding,
but then being old enough to talk to people that had been to I had a biography teacher at school, grew up in Sydney. And he always used to tell about this band he used to see at this venue up in Sydney. He's like, yeah, they were crazy, man. They used to eat dog food on stage and used to do all this stuff. Now I'm older, I realise he was talking about Stat X. Like, he was yeah, man, they used to like, you know, they'd have like pins through them and shit. And I was like, I talked to him not too long ago. I was like, that was actually a band, like Stat X. I know which band you used to go and see. It's the funny thing was if they think bands like they like, you know, like, oh, can't let Cannibal Corpse into the country. But then you look like some of the craziest bands I know of in the metal scene are from Australia. Like, is that thing like Reggae was saying? Like, Glenn Benton was just like, I don't want to fucking play Australia because they're disgusting. Yeah. And it's like, dude, if the singer of Deicide is like fucking like, what the fuck?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know if you connect these dots, but my mind just went like Armoured Angel was so influential on Australia's metal scene. You should probably feel partially responsible for disgusting Glenn Benton.
I'll take that.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll own that.
That's a claim to fame, if anything.
But like speaking of like, like Australian crowds are so crazy and like the pits and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
More and more I realise this, especially being different venues around town that don't always have metal gigs on, that like, well, all right, well, the primary metal venues are booked out, so like a band will book another venue in town.
Not usually.
And then they'll be like, wow, this is, like Lukey was saying, this is the best crowd ever, right?
Yeah.
I love the metal crowd. And I find more and more like just the more bands I interview, the more like people in the scene that I meet, the more I realize that no matter how like unapproachable or intimidating the metal scene people seem to be, in person they're always the nicest people, right? And people I see Armoured Angel clips, I see just strumming the bass and all that sort of stuff, but you're actually really well spoken and like have a great lyric style and everything like that. That comes from, like you're mentioning before, more of like a poetry, like lyric background. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more to metalheads than what's on the surface. Let's go a little bit deeper into some of the poetry side and the lyrics behind.
Oh well, I guess changing the name to Armoured Angel is what sort of changed the focus of the lyrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'd was into poetry and sort of stories and storytelling, and mythology and religion, history, that kind of thing. Not as much as I should have. I developed that more as I went along. The mythology and the history. But just into reading a lot of poetry and sort of expressing ideas, that sort of, and then I got into the music, so I was applying that to the music, and no one ever sang along to an instrumental. Let's be honest, So I was interested in stories and storytelling and poems and poetry, mythology, history. Used to write stories through high school and all that, and then sort of got into music in late high school. So, for me, a lot of the passion of music was, there's no point in writing lyrics unless you got something to say. So, so consequently, the more information you can take in, the more you read, you learn new words, which, hopefully some of that comes across, like to Jivasada, with the armoured titles and some of the word usage and all that. So, when you look at a lot of stuff, even like Triumph of Death has just been announced as touring Australia, for example.
How good is that?
Yeah, like righteous. But like look at a lot of Into Crypts of Rays and Dethroned Emperor. So that's storytelling, history.
And also too, that's a progression you can follow too. Like if you follow. Imagine if he stayed in, if it was just always Hellhammer themed, like he didn't go into like Celtic Frost wasn't a thing, and even into
didn't evolve,
it was just constantly that, which is cool. I think you were saying like you get older and you learn, like your vocabulary grows and stuff.
But that shows in the music too. You look at Create Endless Pain to Pleasure to Kill to Terrible Certainty. There's you can see the steps. Personally, for me, I like the sort of, Venom's the same, Welcome to Hell, to black metal. I like the sort of raw aggression of the earlier stuff that's maybe a bit kind of out of time and a bit, chasing yourself or trying to catch the drummer, or whatever. So I like that sort of intensity, whereas things like, I used this in the last podcast, Armoured Angel Mysterium, for me was a bit of, say, Creator's Terrible Certainty or, Metallica's Master of Puppets, just a bit too clean, a bit too clinical, you know what I mean, a bit too precise, lacked that sort of, urgency.
The mongrel.
Lacked the intensity, which I guess Hellhammer to Celtic Frost is the same, a bit more polished, still, good in a lot of ways, but for me I like the Hellhammer, You know, the early raw,
sure.
dirty, gritty, bit out of time sort of stuff. You know.
Yeah,
I think too. Like when it's not as polished, it's definitely there's more of a human element to it.
Yeah, a bit more of a feel to it. Than,
talking about this earlier today while we were waiting for our flight. Actually, overproduced stuff. I think being lucky to sort of be friends with a fair few people in the music scene is I'll be privy to like the demo, the guitar tracks, the live recording, the seeing them play in the sheds, to the getting the scratch tracks from the thing, and then by the time like a mate's band finally records it and I get the copy of the album, I've heard it when it's originally just the 3-chord riff in the shed, you know, and then the vocalist is sort of being like, oh yeah, I've got some lyrics that'll work with that, to hearing this really polished thing. And I think it's like you're saying, like when you prefer it a bit raw, you hear it polished and you're like, it was cool as just before when it was raw and it was aggressive.
You've lost what was good about it.
Yeah, like when it was emotional.
You polish it up too much.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's I think, and I tend to see that happens a lot to bands like between albums. Like they'll when they start fresh and they've got to write new songs, they'll sort of like take a change in direction, and sometimes it works out for the best. Sometimes, like you mentioned, like band will just have one album that's like super polished, or you know, like mix it up a little bit. So yeah, I think it's a bit like even with like Motorhead, like Lemmy's lyrics, like if you just write them down, that's like poetry when you read through some of those as well. Like it's and there's just so many good quotes you can pull out.
Absolutely.
You have an iconic profile picture of you with Lemmy.
Yeah.
Explain to us what it was like to meet the man himself and the story behind leading up to it.
It was pretty good. So that was the 1916 tour. And we actually, Armoured got the support. When I say got the support, obviously probably not officially, but got the support for the Motorhead tour.
Yep.
Or for the Motorhead gig at Queanbeyan Raiders.
Yeah.
Once again, another football club that put the gigs on, you know.
What year was that? Roundabouts.
92.
Yeah. It's so crazy to think of Motorhead at the Queanbeyan Raiders. You know what I mean? Like it's just out of all, like, you know, like.
Well, it's the same as one of my mates in Goulburn always used to share on Facey the Motorhead at the Goulburn, at the club in Goulburn.
Shell Harbour Workers Club, I think they played as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like all these things, and you think, like you were saying before about the old tour rackets, where you would get people come out of the woodwork
they were on the circuit,
to do it, you know. So,
I think on an earlier tour as well, Motorhead played in Jindabyne off season before they developed. You know, it was a ski resort, but they didn't have summer activities. But whoever was promoting them just saw a venue and booked them in. A friend of mine went. Thanks for telling me they were on. Lived in the suburb next to me, didn't ring me.
No.
Went up, saw them, 4 people there. Off season in Jindabyne. And now I can't find it on the official, you know, you can Google and look up official lists. Can't find it on the official list, but I have seen Phil Campbell talking about playing there at Jindabyne on that tour. But that was an earlier tour. I think they played Salinas in Sydney as well on that tour. But when I saw him with on the 1916 tour, so I had a keyboard player with them as well.
Yeah, right.
I think he was a keyboard player from LA. So we kind of kicked off with him. Matt, the guitarist from Armoured Angel, and myself were working at Impact Records. And we lined up a in-store with Motorhead. But Lemmy and Filthy didn't make it for the in-store, so it was just the 2 guitarists, Wizzo and Wurzel. So we got chatting to them and whatnot. Went out drinking with Phil Campbell, got along pretty well with him.
What's he drink?
God, too far back.
Anything.
Too far back. I think we went to Mooseheads. I think we were at Mooseheads. Yeah.
Anything's
it was the only
metal.
place open, I think.
Anything's metal when you're with Phil Campbell.
True.
Yeah. So you went out drinking and then...
so we went out drinking and then they gave us backstage passes and then went to the gig, and I think I think the venue. I think one of Joel's mates knew the venue owner, so they recommended us as a support, and it got confirmed. So we made up flyers and we got given a lot of posters. So we were doing flyer runs and posters and whatnot with our name on them, you know, with Armoured name on the Motorhead posters. And then the record company decided they wanted to really push, I think they were called Pearls Before Swine or something like that.
Okay.
Pearls Before Swine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they kind of got booed off stage anyway because they weren't a good mix. But from memory, I think it was that tour, but then Armoured was playing in Melbourne the next weekend, somewhere like Sarah Sands or Bell Street Rock or somewhere like that. And those venues put you up. They gave you a bed for the night, you know. So we had 2 nights in a row. We were doing an all-ages, you know, Friday show and then a Saturday show.
Yep.
And we said to the venue, oh, look, Motorhead's playing on the Saturday. No one's going to come, you know. Can we stay at your pub for free anyway? You know? And they're like, yeah, no worries. So we went and came down and saw Motorhead, and because we'd made that association, they gave us backstage passes. So, sorry, I think I just spit on you then. But,
that's
you know,
right.
We'll get to you later.
You're not the
you're
first
a bit further
guy
away.
to spit on me, man.
Yeah, I definitely. Come on, what are we at are we a SADX gig or an Armoured Angel show?
Speaking of, I was gonna say, man, it's like I've been spat on by the best. I've had Dave Slave spit on me, man. So like,
yeah,
we all have.
Well, now I feel like I owe you more.
Yeah, so that was interesting because we were in a couple of carloads, and when everyone left, everyone thought I was in a different car, so I got stranded. You know, I think it was Melbourne Festival Hall or something, and everyone's left. I didn't know where we were staying. And one of our friends from Melbourne said, "Oh, come with me. I'll give you a lift back to your hotel." You know, and Motorhead were there and said, "Oh, come back to our hotel with us." You know, so Graham, this Melbourne guy, and I went back to the hotel with Motorhead.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a record. You know, we just sat in the corner getting ignored because it was just a record company, you know.
Yeah.
Executives everywhere and all this. But I think predominantly Phil Campbell, but Motorhead were into Neighbours.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So they're like, can we meet people from Neighbours, you know? So they bought this, what was his name? The fucking Muppet from Neighbours.
Toadfish Rebecca.
It was earlier than Toadfish.
It was so young when he started.
I cannot remember for the life of me.
One of them.
Blank. Yeah, so he's turned up in this purple velour suit, you know. Just, oh, Motorhead, is it? Oh, hello. You know? Yeah, it was totally surreal.
That's
you know?
The sort of thing,
like,
you know, Lemmy would have like loved, but like,
yeah, it was very odd. Yeah, they were sort of fawning around him. It was what was his name? He was Mrs. Mangle's grandson or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Mangle bloke. Yeah,
yeah.
Whatever his name was. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's like the well. So I had Dan, one of the Motorhead tour managers. Like he was Lemmy's PA.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he lives in Canberra now.
Yeah, right.
So I had him on the show, and he was just talking about how much of a man of routine Lemmy was. Like, so if he had a thing that he wanted to meet someone or know someone from the show, that would have been it. You know, they would have got it. But he said he's had such a presence. You know, like it just being around the same, like when you're in the same room as him, like you can tell where the attention is and stuff.
Oh, definitely. So. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just the perfect gentleman. Like I was standing a bit lost backstage at Melbourne, I think it was Festival Hall. And, you know, Lemmy came over and just saw me standing there by myself, came over and we started talking skull rings, you know, as you do, you know. Yeah. Male bonding. But, yeah, you know what I mean? He was just, perfect gentleman, sort of cottoned onto something we had in you know, similarities or whatever.
Yeah, that's
and
the
opened a conversation and, you know.
And that's how you know that he was, like he was who he was because there's so many testimonies to that. Like the amount of stories of people being like, oh, I met him and he was not up here. He wasn't in this godlike level. He was just like, oh, cool, cool rings, man. Yeah, I've got it. Like, you know, like
exactly. Yeah.
You know,
that's the metalhead version of talking about nails. Like for the girl, like the girls that I see talk about where do you get your nails done? We're like, where'd you get your skull ring?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
We touched briefly on this in the last episode. You mentioned that like some of your some of your like access to music and stuff was a little bit later on, because when you first when you're at that age where most people were like watching TV and listening to radio and stuff, you were in a community without that, like electricity and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Tell us more about that. What that was like.
Well, so I was born in Alice Springs, but the family actually lived in Papunya, which is 200 miles south. I don't know. Look at a map.
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
Yeah.
So first couple of years of my life were in Papunya, central, Australia, and then my parents got posted to two of them, and I can't remember which one we were on, but they're called the Goulburn Islands. So we're on an island there, like an isolated community, for a couple of years as well. We had the one car on the island, and don't think there were any wild buffaloes there, but I think one might have swum across and was terrorising the school where my parents worked. So I remember my dad chasing around this buffalo in his car, trying to push it back into the ocean.
The buffalo soldier.
Yeah, they're brutal up there too. And then when we moved to the mainland, those I guess the best way of putting them, water buffalo, was from Crocodile Dundee, where he hypnotises that water buffalo. Yeah. So they're a couple of ton, and they're wild. Yep. In Indonesia, they're domesticated. So the kids will, they use them for harvesting the rice paddies and all this, and the kids will ride to school on them, and, they're totally domesticated. In Australia, totally wild. So we had a couple of sports carnivals cancelled at school because there were buffaloes sort of fighting on the, carnival grounds or whatever. So they'd come into town and terrorise the town occasionally. A little girl from Indonesia got gored to death by one, not realising that they were wild. She's come from
where they're
domesticated, so she didn't realise that, so she got killed by one up there. So they're pretty brutal. Yeah. So. It was still an isolated mining community, and we lived on the Aboriginal mission, which was about 20 miles out of the town. So we used to have to travel that for when we were of a school age every day, and then moved to Canberra probably when I was around just at the end of primary school into high school. So I didn't really start getting into music until the end of high school, through sort of friends. I guess all my friends weren't really a little bit into music, but, discovered sort of the heaviest stuff at that kind of age.
I think it's a natural
16,
progression of, because a lot of my mates did, and it's like that whole thing, like you never used to be metal. I had a few mates that like Metallica, and that was the limit of, and then a few mates that were like me, like it was like, mate, burnt me the Slayer. Yep. You gave me I had a burnt tape of Hella Weights.
Yep.
I remember getting home and putting it on and turning it down so mum didn't hear it, and I was just listening to it, and I was like,
that's your gateway to more and more.
Dude, I needed to find something heavier, and it was and then it was Mayhem. And then, of course, the controversies of, Gorgroth at the time was not only are they heavy, but and I found out about the whole, Norwegian scene and stuff. I think it's a progression when you, a handful of mates get together and it's the, that's a heavy band. I've got a heavier band. And then it's, and it's generally how a lot of the, I know with my mates is we ended up with, listening to some utter ridiculous stuff. By that point was the progression into who could get heavier.
Yeah, it's just a snowballing effect.
Yeah.
And I find that with that whole Norwegian scene when that erupted, the way I thought those guys were acting out was the way the press portrayed what they thought metal was.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, this is what metal is. We're meant to burn churches and stab people and, kill people. And that wouldn't have gone down in any other place. You would have, you can imagine them trying to do that in America or the UK or even Australia. It just happened to be in an environment, and they had their historicity with their religious, regions, and they're trying to bond with their ancestors and see Christianity as an invasion. It sort of seems like, to my mind, without denigrating them, but seems like a bunch of little kids reading things and going, oh, that's the way you're meant to act, and then going and acting on it, being in an environment where they got away with it.
I think a big thing was too, sort of in the last maybe 10, 15 years, I've noticed was the amount of dudes from like first wave, like Scandinavian scene, even some like you know, England and stuff, that were like, you know, you had a handful of people actually from the music community that were doing it, but the amount of tag-alongs that were just like this is going to be my in to be cool with the crowd if I do this thing. So it's like, you know, the amount of people that have like come out from then saying that, like, you know, maybe the guitarist was involved or whatever, but it was actually his friends that, you know, did this thing that time, or the tag-along guy that just wanted to be in on it. I think especially like the amount of people that have said, yeah, especially with like Hell of It and stuff, they've said it was just a social gathering. People would go in there and not buy records, but just go in there to see the guys and hang out. That were like, this is my tag along. So you end up with that whole like, oh, I'm going to be cool.
It becomes tribalism. It becomes a community. And it becomes finding you can belong to a group or whatever, you know, a club or whatever, that kind of thing. That's very true.
That's like my claim to fame for merch. One of the first. Because we have Canberra Metalheads merch. I'm sure you've seen it with Armoured Angel merch, probably more than us. Just people upload random photos. You're like, oh shit, there's like one of our shirts, or there's one of our things, you know, just in random spots. I don't think I caught the tag. Like, I must have missed it when he uploaded it. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, did you see the photo I put up? And I'm like, nah. And he shows me Canberra Metalhead shirt in Hell of It. Like next to the Hell of It, where it's written on the wall.
Yeah, the black metal.
And I was just, and I was like, that is like one of the best spots I've ever seen our merch. And then Ben Weber from Deprivation wore a set of Canberra Metalheads mosh shorts when he was on stage at Wacken. So it's like cool to see. In front.
It's good to get that vibe. Trying to build something.
Just great like moments where you just like you know.
Yeah, it's kind of validation of a sort, really, isn't it? As well, you know, something to be proud of, that other people are picking up on what you do. You know.
I think when you see it pop up in unexpected places too, like I've seen some of the original South Coast Metalhead patches pop up on like a few like pretty notable dudes from the Sydney scene back in the day. And just being like, I just remember being like, because I mailed some out, like one of the guys got 5. He was just like, oh, can I get 5? And he like money ordered me the cash back, and I didn't think anything of it. And then I was at a Temptress gig, and I was like, the pedigree of, you know, the amount of people that come out for Temptress. I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's the guy from that band. And that's, oh, fuck. And then I'm looking at the patch jackets. I was like, is that a Metalheads patch? What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
Like,
So
which is really cool. And like, again, like I think a couple of years later at Creator gig, being in the pit standing next to a dude that I didn't even know, and just like, being like, oh, fuck, you're wearing a South Coast Metalheads thing. And he's just like, oh, fuck. He's like, oh, are you the dude? I'm like, oh, I am. But, like, you know, it's cooler just to see my shit in the wild.
See it getting out and about.
I think the hoodie,
people representing it,
exactly. The hoodies have passed the test, because I walked through, like, the mall and I just see, like, a non-metalhead chick wearing a Canberra Metalheads hoodie.
Oh, wow,
And I was just like, oh, I like your hoodie, just thinking she might recognize me. Like, oh, nice hoodie, like that. And she's gone, oh, it's my boyfriend's. And I was just like, that's respect, because you stole the cool one, you know? So, it's good to see stuff getting out. Now, I made a promise on the last episode. It was pretty loose, but I like to stick to even my loose promises. So, Lukey and I have not come down empty-handed. We do hope that you never listen to it.
It's terrible. I'm going to give it.
Just put it in your collection.
It's an ornament.
And never don't degrade your tape player with the sounds of this. But here is a copy of our first ever Forest of Darkness Brotherhood of Blasphemy demo tape.
Thank you very much.
From us to you. You were, aside from Lukey and I, you're the only person with a copy.
3 of 13.
Awesome.
And we're all in the room.
Thank you, guys.
That's right. No, thank you.
Yep. Lukey drew the artwork.
I was about to say, this looks like Lukey's artwork.
Yeah, we did that. I was 18 and Lukey was 16.
Wow.
We recorded that.
Nice.
And it's on I didn't want to use up one of my long tapes, so I recorded that onto a 20-minute cassette.
And there's probably still heaps of time at the end.
And there'll be a bit of blank space.
Plenty of room on there for you to record your favourite tracks after. So, but we thought that like, all right, that's not quite going to make the quota for gifts. So we've been thinking for the last months, what was going to be something that we could part with or get for you.
Nice,
so
thank you.
Lukey and I have gone through our collection.
I think this is one of them. It's also a thoughtful gesture as well. It doubles up as I think we're going through our collections of, you know, what's what and what will be appreciated and stuff. And I think this is also one of them. Is also a sentimental gesture.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was like, for the man that has everything, what can we choose to give Lucy that's going to actually maybe not be something that he has already? So we went through both of our collections, and we mentioned before we didn't want stuff to double up. So I compared mine to Luke's, and anything he had, I was happy to part with.
Wow.
So in reference to our last episode talking about Hobbs, here is a copy of...
Thank you so much.
Now,
Wow.
yeah, so that isn't that's the gold vinyl edition.
Yep.
Also, inside, you can open it if you want. It's the last ever gig that Peter Hobbs did.
Yep.
He sat there for about an hour taking the time to actually personally sign. So that's actually signed by Hobbs just before the last ever gig he ever did.
Wow.
Yep.
That is, honoured once again. Yeah, thank you.
That was one of them. When I was in cahoots with Hobbs, he sort of, what should I bring? How much merch is too much merch to bring? And I was like, dude, like whatever you feel comfortable with, because I knew that I would end up, if he didn't sell any merch, I'd just buy it all anyway because I was such a big fan.
Just grab some stuff, yeah.
And like he came down and he's just like, I didn't know what to bring and, you know, what kind of fans were going to be here and how much shit was going to be too old and stuff. He's like, I had boxes of tapes, and I was like, I won't touch the tapes, you know. But he was saying at the end of it, like, it was just cool to have people come up and just be like, I just want to, like, you know,
shoot the breeze, grab an autograph,
like, sign it. But I just, like, he was saying there was people there that wanted to talk to him all the way through from like the first couple of recordings and Tyrus and the recording process with him. All the way through to I only started listening to you at the Heaven Bled album, you know, like it's so
the later comers,
you know, so he's like it was really cool, you know. So he's like, I'm glad I brought everything because it gave me a chance
gives
to
you the historicity,
everything, you know. And then people like me that was I just walked up and I was just like, one of everything, you know. Great. Like
awesome. Yeah. A good opportunity.
Yeah. And one of them, glad I did. But it also means that we get the chance to pass on.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And autographed as well.
Yeah, so there you go. There's the third episode, the final chapter of the trilogy. And really appreciate you being on the show. I'm so glad that we're able to have you on.
Likewise.
And also every episode's unique. So if you haven't heard the other ones, listen back. We've basically gone through the history of Armoured Angel in the last couple, and this one we hit some more personal stuff about Lucy yourself. So I really, really appreciate having you on the show and being able to talk about so much cool stuff. Now, Lucy did actually also not come
gifts for you.
Empty-handed. So we have some a bunch of cool albums that Lucy still has. So if you want to buy any Armoured Angel stuff,
those things are all available as well.
Yeah. So go hit up Lucy for these, because
do yourself a favor. It's some of the best metal you'll listen to.
Yeah, there you go. So if you hit up Lucy.
Thank you.
And
we've actually got 3 cassettes coming out as well that I've just licensed. So there's Angel of the Sixth Order, the full album with the Yuri and Steve lineup. I've just released. Licensed Lampshade tapes in the US on that one, and Messe Noir in Germany. So they're both putting out copies of that. And then there's also a US label doing Mysterium on tape as well.
Oh, excellent.
And Hell's Headbangers have got Baptism in Blood coming on vinyl as well, which will differ from the Abysmal Sounds version.
Yeah, perfect. So, that's one of my favourite labels to buy off. Yeah,
kicking off. So
there we go. Cool. Hey, there's a look behind the curtain as to what's to come. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you again very much, Lucy, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I like that we were able to close it off and play a little bit of tribute to Hobbs in a callback to the Australian metal scene. Now, closing out the episode, what track should we throw on at the end? What would you like to announce as the closing track?
Crikey, I don't know. Hymn of Hate always goes well. I think that's the most, probably the most popular track, I guess. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, let's go Hymn of Hate.
Hymn of Hate here on Canberra Metalheads.